Hello, ladies and gentlemen. It's William Bellamy. I'm back. I'm here to talk to you about our election. Because it seems everywhere we turn nowadays, all we hear is vitriol from both sides. There is no more civil discussion. Now, the background that led me to where I'm at now, making this video about the election, I remember as a child waking up in the backseat of my grandfather's car driving from Houston to Midland, which is still within the state of Texas, but it's still a pretty long drive. I looked up and saw a sign that said Iran, one of those you're entering signs. And there is an Iran in West Texas. It's spelled Iraan. And this is while they had the hostages in the embassy in Tehran. I also remember watching Saturday morning cartoons, and during a Super Friends episode, there was one of those little cartoon commercials for kids that came on talking about I'm a bill on Capitol Hill that talks about how a bill gets created and then turns into law. So you're talking about going back to the late 70s, that when I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I was already paying attention to the stuff around me because I found it so interesting. There was also catching parts of the Reagan debate that year. Now, moving forward, I went to the United States Army. I spent 23 years there, where I did vote. I voted in every election since I turned 18. But I did not really talk about politics until after I left the Army. I just didn't feel it was my place. I can have my opinion, but you swear an oath to support and defend the Constitution, regardless of the party the president's in. I joined under a Republican. Then it transitioned to a Democrat, back to Republican to a Democrat. My job was to serve the Constitution and follow the orders of whoever the commander-in-chief was, because the American people decided that's who should be in charge. Now, politically, I'm not a Democrat or a Republican. I'm an independent. I pick and pull from either side. I vote for who I think will do the best job for the American people. I'm not locked into any party loyalties because I think that's where people's biggest mistake is. They blindly follow one or the other, when sometimes neither is right. Now, what bothers me the most as an independent is I'm willing to have a civil debate about anything, because you may actually teach me something I didn't know, or you may actually make me rethink something and change my mind about who I'm going to vote for, because I'm not closed-minded. Tell me your ideas. Show me what I'm missing in one candidate or another candidate, good or bad. Now, in 2016, I sat next to a coworker, and she and I, at the beginning of the election cycle, were able to have a civil discussion as the primaries were going on. Once Clinton and Trump were nominated from their parties, it was impossible to have a civil discussion with her. It turned into an argument, so I just quit talking about it, because no matter what I said, no matter what I countered with, it was evil and wrong, and it's not going to work, and it's the only person for us. Now, I'm not going to offer my opinion for which was right and which was wrong, but we know who got elected. And then came Russiagate and the investigation into Russian tampering, and did you work with the Russians? And, well, here's a secret. Did the Russians, the Chinese, and probably North Koreans try to interfere with our election? Yeah. I would bet your next paycheck on it. Now, with that being said, we know for a fact the Soviets tried to interfere with our elections from at least the end of the Cold War. Maybe longer, because the Soviet Union tried to infiltrate American groups, and they tried to infiltrate British groups. Their goal was to spread communism, as ours was to spread democracy. So, in all reality, it could go all the way back to 1919, when the American Expeditionary Force landed in Russia to help defend the Trans-Siberian Railroad, and fought with Bolsheviks then, before the Soviet Union was even completely founded. Now, I could find nothing that shows that, But given what was going on in the world at the beginning of the Cold War, then yeah, every election since the Cold War started, they have probably tried to interfere with our elections or infiltrate groups or turn politicians. I don't doubt that for a second. But there is an organization called the Political Action Group. It's not in the Soviet Union. It's not in Russia. It's not in North Korea, and it's not in China. It's in the Central Intelligence Agency. Now, I wonder what that group was designed for. Could it have been that group was designed to interfere with elections? I think that may be the case. So we're no less guilty than they are. There's reports about money that went through the State Department to influence the election in Israel. Now, do I think it truly has an effect? No. Do I think Russia and China would like to have a vote in our elections? Yes, I do. Would we like to have a vote in theirs? Yes, we would. But it's a zero-sum game. More often than not, we put a lot of time and effort into it without achieving the result we're looking for, just like they do. Now, as we move forward in the election, which is tomorrow, mail-in ballots became a huge issue because of COVID-19 and a lot of other things. Here's my biggest issue with mail-in ballots. It's not that every vote shouldn't count. I think every vote should count. I think that barely 50% of Americans voting in presidential elections is a disgrace. Now, the problem I have with mail-in ballots is there's incompetence. I don't think it's voter fraud. I don't think it's ballot harvesting. I think the biggest negative effect on mail-in ballots is sheer incompetence. From the election board to the post office to, honestly, as much as it pains me to say, is the voter himself making mistakes. There's reports of voters in California that have sprayed disinfectant on their ballots or microwaved their ballots to kill possible COVID-19, which now those ballots are voided because they've been tampered with. So those votes aren't going to count. So those Americans that exercise their right to vote, their vote's not going to count through sheer lack of knowledge. That is, I think, where the problem comes in. Now, we'll see what happens with the election tomorrow. I think we're going to go into another situation where it's Bush v. Gore, and there's court cases and everything else, and we may not know who is actually elected president for the next couple of months. What I would like, and historically what has happened, is when we have a fairly clear winner, is the other candidate concedes, so we can move forward peacefully. And what I would really like to see that I've never seen before is both candidates appear, concede face to face in a form of unity for our country and a sign of civility that we've lost as a country. And then we move forward and we mend our issues and we heal as a country. We live in a country based on a constitution. Our Constitution has lasted longer than any other country in the world. Transition of power, even during World War I and World War II, was a peaceful process. Whether you like the candidate or you dislike the candidate, you still move forward. Because in 4 years, you can change that candidate if he does that bad of a job, he or she does that bad of a job. The other issue that comes up that really bothers me as a veteran is there's talk about, well, the military could do this or they can use the military for that, or here's a secret. In the end, we got the greatest military in the world. But they're not beholden to a person. They swear an oath to the Constitution. And if what they're ordered to do violates the Constitution, they are not going to follow that. What most people don't realize is the majority of senior military leaders even if they go to a military academy, at some point in their career, they go to get graduate degrees or PhDs, and they get them at Duke and at Harvard and at Princeton and at Yale. And they're exposed to other ideals. They are not 100% conservative across the board. You've had several retired military generals prove that they are not lockstep conservative Republican Party. They will say what they think, and they will follow the Constitution. That is what's important to them. That's why it bothers me when they talk about the president or this person using the military to trample somebody else. That's what happens in dictatorships. That's what happens in socialist, Marxist, and communist countries. That's not what happens in America. I really hope we have another civil, peaceful transition of power, regardless of who gets elected. I don't care who gets elected, if you want my honest answer. I want you to vote. Whoever gets elected, no matter how bad a job they do, in 4 years they're gone. They can be voted out. And if President Trump gets reelected, then it'll be the term limit, and he's gone anyway. Now, with that being said, there's also been comments made that if President Trump is reelected, the violence will not end. The riots in Philadelphia and Minneapolis, they will just keep going. That is not how we're supposed to do things. That's how things happen in places like Somalia. That's how things happen in places like Zimbabwe and Venezuela. That is not the United States. We don't destroy property of those that can at least afford to rebuild it. And yet it's happening in our country now. Let's go back to a place of civil debate. Let's go back to talk about what's wrong and fix it. What I would like to see is, regardless of who wins, then the person that concedes come forward and disavow violence. Ask your followers, ask the people who voted for you to stand up for civil discussion, to stand up for peace. What we do not need in this country is more destruction. What we do not need is more division. What we do not need is more hatred because of what politics somebody has. Let's come together as a country again. We are the greatest democracy in the world. We are one of the few countries that for over 100 years people have died trying to get to, crossing deserts, crossing barbed wire fences from East Germany. The goal was to get to the United States, where everybody has a chance. And with that, if you like what I have to say, please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. If you don't agree with what I have to say, then hit dislike and in the comments tell me what you disagree with. Like I said, I'm open-minded. You may actually change my mind. But be careful, because I may change yours. But it's a new channel, so please like, subscribe, and share with your friends. Or dislike and share with your friends so you can ridicule me. But either way, as long as it's a civil debate, I can live with it. All right. Everybody have a good evening.